Welcome to another episode of Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture. And as of the recording of this, it's a couple of weeks before Halloween. And I don't know about you guys, but back in the day, we always used to look forward to watching a couple of Halloween specials, carving the pumpkin, going trick or treating, and of course, getting all the candy. Today, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite Halloween specials from back in the day. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. This was an annual watch for me as a kid. It really set the tone for future Halloween specials. I believe there's a Garfield special that was pretty good. And then, of course, can't forget the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes that kind of all started from this Charlie Brown cartoon that came out in 1966 and really aired on public TV until 2020 when it was bought up by Apple, which you could go to Apple Plus and see it at any time nowadays. But it was on air for 54 years. That's an amazing feat. This show is so spectacular. It transcended generations. There are multiple people that watched it when they were kids and then grew up and had kids of their own and showed it to their children. Such an amazing thing. So in this video, I'm going to share some interesting stories about the production. I'm going to talk a little bit about the casting and some interesting stories with the cast. I'll talk a little bit about Snoopy in particular. There's some interesting backstory with what he does in this special. And then finally, I'll talk about some of my favorite lines and favorite scenes. So let's get into the production. So the production was very interesting. After the Charlie Brown Christmas special, the network CBS ordered 2 more Charlie Brown specials because the Christmas one did so well. And yes, we will talk about it in a few months in December. We'll do a whole show on Charlie Brown Christmas, which is one of my favorites. So in the summer of 1966, Charlie Brown All-Stars came out, and it didn't do as well as the Christmas special. And so the network put a little bit of demands on the creators. CBS basically said that it needed to be a blockbuster or there would be no future Charlie Brown animated features. And so that put a lot of pressure on, obviously, the creator of the comic strip, Charles Schulz, who wrote everything, the animator and director, Bill Melendez, and producer, Lee Mendelson. However, the good thing about that was it gave them a little bit more creative freedom, and they had a rather large budget for the time of $76,000, which allowed them to be a little bit more authentic and come up with some good ideas. One of the ideas that they knew they wanted to bring from the comic strip into the show was Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and Lucy pulling it away. They definitely knew that this was going to be fall during football season, so they definitely wanted that element in there. The other thing that they really wanted was they knew Snoopy was extremely popular, and he had the World War I flying ace costume that you see in the comic strips, and they really wanted to bring that as part of the show. Well, Schultz thought that, the World War I flying ace costume also seemed like a Halloween costume. So that's where they got the idea to do a Halloween special. And so what they did was they came up with The Great Pumpkin, which if you're not familiar with the show, number one, you should go watch it. But essentially, The Great Pumpkin is sort of like a Santa Claus where he brings presents to all the good little boys and girls, and Linus has a steadfast belief in him. So it's really interesting. It's really fun how they came up with this idea. So now they needed to put it together. So one of the interesting things about the production and how they came up with this was trick or treats mixed in with The Great Pumpkin. And if you know Charlie Brown, he's always the lovable, down on his luck guy. And so one of the things that Schultz did was, hey, every time he goes to get trick or treats, he always gets tricked, and they give him a rock. One of my favorite lines, which I'll get to later, I got a rock. But one of the producers thought it was a little bit too cruel, but eventually got on board when they saw the audience react to it, and they did it 3 times for 3 different houses. So I thought that was very funny. Like I said, they used child actors. Let me talk a little bit more about the animation and the specifics there. So like I said, Melendez was the director and lead animator, and he got his team together, and they did something a little bit different in this Peanut special. So unlike the previous specials, this one incorporated movement of the camera. And so had different types of shots and different ways that they were panning and doing animation, which was a little bit more sophisticated for that time. The other thing that they did was, especially with the Snoopy scenes, um, they incorporated actual paintings. So one of the artists painted the backgrounds of the French countryside, and the cool thing is that he did it from memory of France and being over there. So I thought that was really cool because he had visited the areas around Europe, so he knew what to draw and how they look. So when you see Snoopy get shot down behind enemy lines and he's going through the different areas, check out the scenery. Those are all paintings of actual memory of Europe and being in Europe. And I thought the design was fantastic. It actually was, significant because in the comic strips, Snoopy was always stayed on the doghouse when he's flying. The animation actually allowed them to show the doghouse taking off and flying and in the air, shooting and getting shot at, and then crash landing. So it was real revolutionary for that and really showed Snoopy flying. It also got an award and was really recognized as one of the most creative things that they had ever done. So it was really cool how they did this and what they did with the designs. I think the animation is fantastic in this show, especially for that time. I mean, 1966, and it held up. It's held up still to today. So it's great. So now the soundtrack is another thing that I want to add with part of the production, because I don't think you can have a Charlie Brown show without some of the music that goes in it. And Vince Gilardi, the famous jazz pianist, brought in a lot of his different soundtracks and different ideas. He brought in, of course, his famous track Linus and Lucy, which you always hear at the beginning of this. So that was brought in. And then he brought in a couple of other hits. So there's a Pumpkin Waltz that he created. It's first heard when Linus is riding to the Great Pumpkin, and at the beginning and plays throughout. There are a couple World War I songs that he actually has Schroeder play on the piano that Snoopy reacts to. It's a Long Way to Tipperary, There's a Long, Long Trail, Pick Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag, and Roses of Bacardi. So it was interesting how they went into history and pulled out some of that music. Like I said, the production is just great, and how they put everything together. Let's talk a little bit more about the casting and some of these child actors. So the cast returned from the Charlie Brown Christmas episode and from the summer episode. Everybody except you had a new Lucy, and child actress Sally Dreyer was cast as Lucy. Most of these kids were the voice actors for a few years, and then as they grew up, they would get other children to play the Peanuts gang as we went along. But Peter Robbins was Charlie Brown for quite a while, and he had the famous when he would play baseball, and that that groan from Charlie Brown stayed with Charlie Brown all the way through over the last 40, 50 years. So he always got credit for that, even though he outgrew the role after about 6 years of doing it. And unfortunately, his story is rather tragic. He had some issues with depression, and I don't want to be a downer, but if you want to go look him up, it's a tragic tale. Unfortunately, before he passed away, he was working on a book about Charlie Brown and his experience, but he never got to finish it. One of the most interesting stories involves the actress who is playing Sally. Now, the funny thing and the funny story about Sally and the actress that played her is that her mom called the producers the night before and said that, hey, she's got a tooth loose, and if the tooth comes out, then she may talk with a lisp. And so the writers and animators were like, whoa, no, we can't have that. She can barely be understood if she talks with that. So what they did was they brought her down and they had her record all her lines. And she had a little bit of trouble with restitution. So what they had to do was they had to have her pronounce it out each syllable at a time. And what they did was they cut each syllable and sliced it together so that when she says restitution in the end of the show, it's all together, it's all one word, and it sounds good. Ironically, after she finished all her lines, she lost her tooth right then and there, and it worked out. Fortunately, they got all her lines before she lost a tooth and could potentially talk with a lisp. So it was really interesting. The recording of the actors, I think the kids made it easy, make it more memorable. One of the cool things is the director, lead animator, Melendez, he actually does Snoopy. And here's how he does Snoopy. So what he would do is he'd record him saying nonsense words. And then he'd speed it up so that you can you can't really make out what Snoopy's saying, but it sounds kind of funny and kind of goofy. But he played Snoopy and did that for years. And I thought that was interesting to kind of pull back the curtain and find out that about Snoopy. Anyway, as we're talking about Snoopy, let's get into this and talk a little bit more about his character specifically. Let's talk about Snoopy. Snoopy really kind of steals the show in this animated special. He's on it. He's got the most screen time, and his World War I flying ace is the most memorable. I mentioned the fact that you see him going through the French countryside, and those are paintings. Animators and artists alike praise this for those scenes, and it's used as an example for future animation. So it really took the cake. The other thing about Snoopy that was so popular with his World War I flying ace, that the U.S. military, different squadrons, would adopt Snoopy as a mascot, and they would paint it on airplanes and different patches and different things. So Snoopy became extremely popular for that. I do recall that he did have a balloon in the Thanksgiving Day Parade where he's in his World War I flying ace costume. So yeah, Snoopy really helped this take off, and he was a key figure for it. So this show was so successful that it earned a 49% share, which back at the time, there were only 3 networks, and that was huge. To get almost half the population watching your show on one of these networks was unheard of, and they knocked it out of the park. This special is widely considered one of the best of all the Peanut specials, and it really, like I said, started Halloween traditions of Halloween specials, which is great. So let's get into some of the scenes and some of my favorite moments of this. Okay, we're going to talk about some of my favorite scenes and lines. They won't necessarily be in order of the show, but these are my favorites. So the first one is classic from the comic strip. You can see a picture of it over here on my left, where Charlie Brown is trying to kick the football and Lucy just pulls it right away from him and he falls right on his back. It makes me laugh every time. It's on several Charlie Brown specials. I just think it's hilarious. It's just a lot of fun. Ironically, I would hold the ball for one of my friends in a unique way. He had me hold it kind of up on my toes so I could get elevation, and he could get elevation on his kicks. But I never pulled it away from my buddy back in the day. Always fun to do that, and it kind of reminisces and reminds me of some of those things in playing football with my friends. Now, I want to mention one other thing. The DVD that has this also has a special called It's Magic Charlie Brown. And in that episode, It's Magic Charlie Brown, Snoopy is a magician, and he makes Charlie Brown invisible. And so an invisible Charlie Brown, when Lucy is practicing her holds, doesn't know he's there. He comes up and he kicks the ball, and he actually gets to kick it. Pretty funny, pretty awesome bonus episode. So that's one of the reasons why I would also recommend, not to go off on a tangent, that you try and find these on physical media, because they'll have bonus content and bonus episodes. So some of my content from this came from bonus material on the DVD. Also, it's on Apple TV right now, but you never know where it might be online, and you might not be able to find it if they take it off. If you have physical media, then you can watch it at any point. So always want to recommend physical media if possible. So the next scene that I really love is kind of in the upper right, the picture of Snoopy, and it's Snoopy that appears in the pumpkin patch when Linus and Sally are thinking it's going to be the Great Pumpkin. This is just a hilarious scene in this show, and it just really cements Snoopy as the main character of the show, and it's hilarious. It cracks me up every time to see Snoopy popping up in that pumpkin patch, holding up the pumpkin instead of the Great Pumpkin, and having Linus just kind of faint and fall over. It's hilarious. Now, to go on with that is my third favorite scene, which happens right after that, is just Sally just getting angry with Linus and demanding restitution. She realized that she missed out on going and getting trick-or-treat candy, and she missed a Halloween party, all to stay out with Linus when the Great Pumpkin didn't even show up for them when they're in the pumpkin patch. So that's a hilarious scene. As I mentioned, the little girl who played Sally had trouble pronouncing restitution. So, like I said, they had to pronounce it out in syllables and cut it. It's just a funny, fun scene. The next scene that I really love is probably one of the most famous lines and famous parts of this cartoon special. It's when they're all trick-or-treating, which interesting costumes. Lucy, of course, is a witch ghost, and the rest of them are kind of ghosts, and Charlie Brown had trouble with the scissors, so he's a ghost with like 8 or 9 holes in the ghost costume, which is kind of funny because he just kind of stands out and looks kind of ridiculous. So they go and they get trick-or-treats, and everybody's getting all this great candy and popcorn balls and all kinds of stuff. And Charlie Brown looks in his sack in the first house and he goes, "I got a rock." And as I mentioned before, the animators had him do it 3 different times. He gets tricked and gets rocks. And it's one of the most memorable lines of the show, "I got a rock." It's hilarious every time I see it. A lot of fun and funny, and it's Charlie Brown to a T. And then, of course, for my favorite scenes of the show, and it's kind of the long extended, most of the middle part to the end of the show, is Snoopy in his World War I flying gear. You see Snoopy actually fly the doghouse. You see him duking it out with the Red Baron and getting shot down behind enemy lines. It's just amazing when he's crawling through the grass. He sleeps on a pile of hay. He swims across a stream. And you see all the beautiful artwork, but also it's rather funny, all the things that he does. And he storms what is to be believed as a chateau, but it's really Violet's house where they're having the party, and he sneaks in. And one of my favorite funny scenes is where Lucy says, "Hey, let's bob for apples. Here's how you do it." And she sticks her face in, gets an apple, and the end of it is Snoopy. And of course, she goes crazy. Ick, ick, dog germs. It's just so hilarious and so funny. And just the way Snoopy reacts. So this show is just so funny and so fun. It brings back a whole bunch of childhood memories for me. What are your favorite memories of this? What are your favorite lines or scenes from this special? Don't forget to like and subscribe and share those in the comments below. And we'll see you next time.